I learned that growing a garden, you could become closer to God. Actually, you kind of are in a partnership with God with your garden. You're doing the work, but He's designed the seeds and the earth and the weather, and it all works together to be a beautiful thing, actually. Um, and I learned the basics of gardening. Uh, they would play in the garden, um, and they'd help plant the seeds and do the basics, help weed the garden, and especially pick. They love to pick the garden, um, and I think they learned about the basics of gardening and some hard work. I believe that it helped us um, have a unified goal, and it gave me opportunity to teach our kids uh, even life lessons, and it definitely helped to be able to work alongside each other.
The first year I was almost 9, and the second year I think, almost 10.
First year I was 6, the second year I was 7.
The first year I was almost 3, and the second year I was almost 4.
That I liked to watch my dad drive the tractor and he was grading it and making the rows, columns, whatever you call it, was hard.
I remember when we turned on the sprinkler to water the garden, and I put on my swimsuit and played in the water with my siblings.
Kason tricked us that we had a watermelon growing.
I tilled the dirt with the tiller, and I hoed the dirt with the hoe, and I planted the seeds with the seed packet, and I watered the plants with the sprinkler, and then I picked the veggies with my hands.
Hoeing, picking the vegetables, watering the garden, and planting the seeds.
I remember putting the seeds in the dirt, and that was my favorite.
So I think the main thing that I remember is he used to have a mule that he would use to plow the garden, and so we'd hook up the plow to the mule, and he would have me hold on to the plow and kind of guide it while he would lead the mule in front of me, and so that's how we would go through and plow the garden. And I remember the funny part about that is he would always joke about how we were plowing the garden and fertilizing it at the same time, and you could figure that part out. Over the years of helping my grandpa and doing a couple gardens as a family, I've been able to get a pretty general knowledge of how to grow a garden and how to take care of one. And I think I'm grateful for that. It's going to be really important. I'm always going to want to grow a garden, and continue that on in the legacy. Then another thing I feel like it taught me service. I know there were definitely times that I didn't want to go help in the garden, and there were some times that I did, but I knew that my grandpa needed help in the garden, and so I wanted to be able to help him, make it a little easier on him, and and be able to serve him in that way. So yeah, I've definitely seen it bring the family together. I remember we decided to do our own garden, a pretty big one too, and I just remember having to work in that garden, and it was a family thing. It wasn't just my parents, or we were all involved with it and all had to help. And so I remember always having to go out there together and pick the vegetables and everything. One year we had a bunch of tomatoes, and we were at my grandparents' house helping them can the tomatoes and store them. And there was a lot of tomatoes, and it was a lot of work. And I just remember there being a lot of people in there, everybody helping each other can the tomatoes. I remember making a lot of salsa out of the tomatoes, and it just felt like, thinking back, it's a good memory, and I feel like it was good as to be able to do that as a family. It just helps you grow closer together.
As a kid, I do remember being hard work. I remember that my dad would grow large fields. Like at one time, he might have 4,500 tomato plants because he did truck farming, and it was more of he would take all of his produce to the farmer's market to sell it there. And so I remember going out with a 5-gallon bucket, picking it full of tomatoes, carrying it all the way back up to where the house was, which was, pretty good ways usually, and then dumping it, and then under a big tree where my dad would be sitting, and he would have these crates, and he was grading tomato plants, and he would sell them at the market. Typically what would happen, he'd go to the farmer's market, and there the grocery stores would come and buy them from grocery stores, those roadside markets, people like that would come to the farmer's market and buy their produce there. I also remember I would get a really bad rash on my arms because I was kind of allergic to the tomato plants, but that didn't make a difference. I still was still had to go out there and pick tomatoes, and I never really even complained about it because I just knew I was going to get a rash, from doing that. But gardening was a big part of my life growing up. My dad's always been a really hard worker, and seeing him, how hard he worked doing his gardening, which was really a truck farm that he had every year, it taught me the importance of hard work. We would have a garden in the spring, and then we would have a garden in the fall, and we harvested, and it was a big job. So it definitely taught me how to work hard. It also taught me that I can always, and I feel very confident that one way or another, I'll be able to provide for my family. And I know that either through, hard work some way, that I'll make it. And if I have to, I'll grow my own food because I know how to do that. My dad taught me that. I know that I can grow enough food to feed my family and also even sell. So I'm not too concerned about at least being able to provide for my family if it comes down to something like that. Yeah, I definitely believe that gardening can bring the family closer together. When we would pick the corn and have to shuck the corn, and we did that as a family, and also having all these, the way my mom cooked, she used all this as she cooked, and so we always had these family meals, and we would sit down together as a family and eat. So that helped us as a family to be closer together. I know it definitely is a way for a family to be close together, and that is eat together.
I lived on a truck farm since all my life, to probably since I was 8 years old. And I still grow vegetables in my garden. I'm 85 now. We had a truck farm, and we grew had about 20 acres of vegetables. So, and there was 8 of us kids, so we all worked in the fields from young on, and we picked peas, squash, cucumbers. We had potatoes, corn. We had grew everything. So everybody had a part in picking, and then my older brothers would take it to the market to sell it. Yes, they all worked in the. We grew some. We did some truck farming too when they were young, and they would pick vegetables during the day, and I'd work on my regular job. And then when I get home, I'd pack them and then take them to the market the next morning early and sell them. I'm sure it has, because my wife's always put up vegetables and put vegetables in the freezer, and so we've always had vegetables to eat in the wintertime too. Oh yeah, because we've all worked together. A lot of times, every member of the family would be in the garden, and so picking peas or whatever. So, and then we'd have to shell the peas, and my wife would have to put them up. So we all helped on everything. Well, I've used everything from a mule. I've farmed with the mule, just a 4-legged mule, and had tractor, and now I use mainly just a tractor and a tiller on small gardens. But when I had bigger, like 2-acre gardens, I had to do that with a tractor or else the mule at times too. So,
you might have to explain the mule because.
Yeah, this is a 4-legged mule with long ears.
And what do you have to put on it and everything?
Well, you had to put a harness on it, and then you had your chains and the single tree to hook the plow to, and you had the lines to drive the mule with, and so.
You just walk behind it?
Yeah, and just walk behind and plow. Pretty much all of my grandkids and my great grandkids that's old enough have helped me in one way or another. Even my grandson helped drive the mule for me while he held the plow while I drove the mule, and then my little great granddaughters helped dig potatoes and drop and plant potatoes too, and so and when we gather corn, they helped in that. Just pretty much in everything. Pick beans. Yeah, it was a lot of fun with all of them.